Gosh,
yesterday would have been a good day for that day.
Well, he said he had a lot to learn and he'll get better and better. It sounds like he's too young to beat the champion Warriors. And what I wrote on my sheet was, Brew was right. The Rockets aren't ready. Brew was right all along. That's not the question we agreed upon, but I figured you would be okay reacting to that. Takeaway?
Well, I got several. My first is this.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
I just said
I'm not even claiming to be some savant, some basketball savant. But after 2+ decades of covering the league, I could see they're too young.
Oh, well.
And they're facing 4-time champions.
Yeah.
They were going down from the get-go, especially when Jimmy Buckets was not out for the season.
That was correct.
But my biggest takeaway outside of that, off of me, is Jimmy Butler, this is serious, is special. Like, this dude is special. Steph is special because of his shooting ability. Draymond is special because of his defense and playmaking. Jimmy Butler is special because of his will. Like yesterday, he willed himself through the game. He was playing in pain, I think, throughout that whole game. And there were a few times you could see it looked like the injury got re-aggravated. And he fought through it. And then he willed them to victory. 14 points in the fourth quarter after scoring 13 throughout the first 3 quarters. All right? And then that rebound. I mean, it's the rebound that is heard around the world. Like,
that's a little strong.
Okay, a little strong.
Good rebound.
But over 7-foot Steven Adams.
Yeah, who could have tipped it in.
6'10" Jabari Smith. Yeah, Adams was in perfect position. And Dylan Brooks lagging. Like, Jimmy Butler goes up and gets that rebound. It was like he was saying, I didn't play through all this pain just to lose.
Yeah.
And when the clutch time came and the fourth quarter came, he willed that team. With Steph not having his great game. He was fine, obviously, but he wasn't. It wasn't a Steph game, and Butler got it done. And so, because of his will, I really believe this. When looking at the Miami Heat teams he took to the finals, which weren't good. No. 1 year Tyler Hero was out. And Bam, you know, he had Bam and then a bunch of role players that some of them can't even get off the bench for their new teams. Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin. They have a real chance to get to the finals. A real chance to get to the finals and even win it, I think. So Jimmy Butler is special is my number one takeaway.
So that's not my number one takeaway, but can I just add something to Jimmy Butler? 62% for the regular season from the free throw line. 12 of 12 last night.
That's nuts.
I mean, that is nuts. That is the...
I didn't realize he shot that poorly.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I knew that it felt like he was, because in the play-in...
Was he better with the Warriors, though?
No, I think for the season, it was 62%. It's what it's what they flashed on the graphic, but they're calling Shingun. So Josh, fact check it. Make sure that's correct. But I just remember in the Clippers game 82, he missed some big free throws. In the play-in game, he seemed shaky from the line. His 12-12 last night, and the 2 at the end to push it from 1 to 3, all of it. My biggest takeaway, sadly, I think is the same as Wild's is, which is about Draymond Green. And so do you want to go about Draymond Green before I go? Because
my take is that Draymond is underrated.
So overrated, underrated, I think it depends on who's rating him and how they're rating him.
Well, all right, so I'll give you my take, and I'll say when Draymond was out of the game and they were just feeding Shingun was unstoppable. Like, I know it's like unstoppable.
No, he was unstoppable.
I really mean it literally. He was unstoppable. So here he was last night. He took a ton of shots. It was like, keep feeding him. They can't stop him. Yeah. When Draymond got back in the game,
he got scared.
That's right. Not only did he stop, going to the basket, the final shot was a fadeaway. He's been spinning layup. And he got a little bit nervous, and I do think for all of our, let's say, give me a breaks on Draymond's behavior that is questionable, and it happened in the finals against Jaylen Brown, the same thing. That stuff works.
It
seems to work and get in people's heads and changes people's games.
And it's the only way he can be great. And so I thought Ime made one big mistake that was an obvious one in the game, which is the moment Draymond got his 5th foul, he should have put Şengün back in. Like, because it was so clear Şengün was not doing Şengün stuff with Draymond in, but when he did eventually put him back in, but I was sitting there watching, like, put Şengün in, forget your regular rotation. You want every minute possible for Şengün when Draymond's out, because Draymond seems to be the perfect guy to guard him. Everyone else on the Warriors seems to be drawing dead against him, and it was their advantage. I think this game, I said it this morning, I'll say it again, put this game on Draymond's basketball tombstone. Another triple single, doesn't matter. Makes 2 shots to start the game, doesn't have to score another point, doesn't matter. He was, with respect to Jimmy, in my opinion, the most impactful player in that game because he had 9 fouls, called him for 5, 3 technicals, called him for 1. Yep. But that's part of flagrant. That could have been something more. It's fine. He gets in a froth. It rattles the other team. He then gets even better. He's doing all types of stuff after the whistle that is not dirty but is annoying. Even him going up to Tari Eason at the free throw, when Tari wasn't shooting free throws on the box outline, seemingly apologizing for what went on, and then Amen Thompson comes over like, yo, don't talk to him. And then Draymond's like, almost like causing a mini rift between Tari and Amen. That's all calculated.
Yeah.
And
also invaded the huddle.
Right. All of these things that lead to winning. And so I have been there are certain things Draymond does that I don't like, but I get. There are certain things Draymond does, most notably his, I think, really cruel attacks on certain players, particularly Karl Anthony Towns, that I think are like a personality defect of his that I think deserve to be criticized. But during the game, he has been, if you remove the Durant era, which is almost its own thing, the pre-Durant and post-Durant, he's always been the second most important Warrior and the guy that unlocks everything. And I just think, I thought that was such a brilliant Draymond performance, and I've been one of his biggest critics, and I will continue to be on things that deserve to be criticized. That was an all-time game by him.
Well, and what he's doing, they're basically starting 4 guards.
Yeah.
Like if we call Jimmy Butler a shooting guard, Steph, Podziemski, Butler, and Buddy Hield, and Draymond, who's like 6'7" at best.
Yes.
All right, and we've seen historically, a Ben Wallace, a Wes Unseld, a Dave Cowens, like great centers who were undersized. And that's what he is. Now, he plays it differently than they do. And he, in a lot of ways, I've called Jokic a point center. Şengün sometimes is like that. Draymond is too, because his playmaking ability allows Steph to not have to be point guard all the time. And Steph can roam and go off the ball and things like that. So I agree, Drake. I don't think he's underrated. I think he's very properly rated. Like, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, and I think everybody accepts that.
And I think he's going to be first ballot. I think he walks in. I think,
and he should.
Yeah,
he should.
And when we start talking about him compared to the greatest defenders of all time, I have pause. When we talk about the most impactful defensive player of the last 10 years of NBA basketball, it's him.
Yeah.
It is him. Rudy Gobert is 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards. I don't care. Kawhi maybe could have been, but he missed so much time with injury. He is the single most impactful defensive player, and he does have a real role in their offense, even though it's not scoring. Like in a critical role in their offense, from the screening and the playmaking from the position.
No doubt.
I mean,
passing ability. Smart. He's very smart.
Right. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I do respect massively that he figured out early on, I have one way that I can play and be a star, and embraced it. You know what I mean? I think he has to play on the edge. I think it has to be this kind of ugly style. I think that because of his limited athleticism, limited shooting, there are a lot of limitations of his game. I just think he got the absolute most out of what he could have gotten.
Yeah, and look, I always thought, I'm going back to Michigan State, he was a skilled player.
Yes.
Like, could pass, handle the ball. I just was like, he's a tweener.
Yep.
Like, where does he fit? He doesn't shoot it well. He's not playing inside, so how's he going to fit? But, yeah, he's fantastic. And his spirit and energy, because Steph is more laid back and chill, they need that energy. It's like a perfect mix for these two.
All right, Rockets down 3-1. Only 8% of teams down 3-1 going home win the championship, which...
Or not win the championship,
win the series. Even less win the championship. In any event, same scenario here for the Lakers on the brink of elimination, down 3-1 to the Frisky Wolves. Luka's averaged 31 on the offensive end, but has been hunted defensively. Your reaction?
Well, first let me get to the defense. Nick, and for the past few years, it's been Jokic, Giannis, Luka for me. Like, those are the three best players in the world. I'm putting Anthony Edwards, unless there's a huge change in this series, I'm putting Anthony Edwards ahead of Luka because of the defense. Luka is not only a bad defender, but a largely disinterested defender. And what I mean is, if he was just bad and interested, like a Steph Curry or a Steve Nash or somebody like that, if you're interested but not the most athletic or strong, so you're not a good defender, you can at least communicate and be in the right position. All right, and that can make you a solid, decent defender, not as much of a liability. But also, who's a great defender, so I think there's a huge gap there. But Anthony Edwards gets his in the flow of the offense. Like Luka, it has to, and I'm not saying Luka's not awesome and all-time great, but I'm saying he has to have the ball in his hands to be effective. If he doesn't have the ball, the Lakers can still run things and be effective, but he's just standing there kind of watching, whereas Anthony Edwards does not have to have the ball to be effective. And so I think he gets his in the flow, which allows your teammates to be the best version of themselves. And Luka's not the only one. A lot of the players of this generation are so ball dominant that their teammates can't be the best versions of themselves. And so that's the first
Right.
thing.
Before you get to the second thing, here's where I would like to respectfully push back on this idea that, listen, I said it yesterday, I guess, that was going to be a big conversation. Yep. Has Ant surpassed Luka? I'm not surprised people are embracing it. My most, I guess, clear-cut pushback would be this. 2 games ago, you didn't feel this way. I didn't feel this way. 2 games ago, when Ant had, hold on. When Ant had gone his last 12 games without even scoring 30 in the playoffs, when Luka had scored 37 in Game 1 and then was awesome in Game 2, and the Lakers were tied, and we thought we were going into Friday with the Lakers about to take control of the series, and then Luka played a game when he was dog sick and played poorly and then didn't, again, I'm not making, let's even pretend he wasn't sick. Right. Let's just say he was fully healthy, everything was fine. Doesn't it feel a little prisoner of the moment-y when we did see these two players play an even higher leverage series last postseason? Luke had the same deficiencies, whatever it was, and he was not this massive liability defensively because that team was built understanding rather than built on the fly. Yep. And he was wildly more impactful offensively. Because I think even with Luka, I know you don't love the heliocentric ball dominant stuff, I think you agree Luka's offensive ceiling is higher than Anthony Edwards' offensive ceiling, and it's demonstrated. Up to this point in their careers, it's not even really debatable.
Well, again, though, look, I have felt Luka's been better than Anthony Edwards, but his numbers may always be better because he is heliocentric.
But it's also led to more winning. He's gone.
Well, last year they got to the finals.
And the year, and
1 year they didn't make the playoffs.
And a couple years before they made the conference finals. Like Anthony Edwards been on one playoff run. He's younger.
Right.
I just feel like
that's
it's a
the
little
thing. He's much younger.
3 years
And the
years
difference
younger.
is, that's a big gap. 3 years.
For sure.
And the defensive gap is so big. I get it. It's arguable. And I think, these things are always fluid. I mean, that's not just something to protect yourself.
Yes.
It is when guys are this close. But right now, and I do think it is so powerful when you can get your offense and be dominant within the system.
I agree with that.
Like, it's difficult. Even LeBron, when he was more heliocentric at the prime of his career, that third guy couldn't be the best version of himself. Chris Bosh, Kevin Love. Couldn't be the best versions of themselves because LeBron had the ball so much, and then the second guy could get his, Kyrie or D Wade. So I think it's very when you can get yours in the flow. Jaden McDaniels and Nas Reed and Julius Randle and, Rudy Gobert doesn't do much, but, they can be the best versions of themselves.
Sorry, and I know you had another point you wanted to make, but don't we though remember last year's Mavericks where every single role player was the best version of themselves? That we were talking about all those guys getting
those were guys
open
that couldn't create. They had one other guy that could create,
right,
and that was Kyrie. Everybody else, if you get spot-up shooters and defenders, which is what the Mavericks had, that's my point. Like, it's more difficult to build around a heliocentric guy like a Luka than an Ant.
Okay.
Like Jalen Brunson. If Jalen Brunson was in Dallas, he certainly wouldn't be this. Yeah. He wouldn't be a star. He wouldn't be an all-star.
Of course.
We didn't know what we didn't think he had any of this.
Well, right, but we also thought that Kyrie was excellent alongside Luka. So like I don't think he'd be a superstar. He'd be the second best guy. But I think we saw a second best guy who's very similar stylistically to Jalen. They're different players.
Now Brunson's ball dominant too,
and so
that's probably why.
And I didn't want to not let you get to your second point.
Well, my next thing was it's just interesting and powerful what he said about there are guys out there they wouldn't have done the Lakers trade for Luka, but the notion of getting out here in front. And I'm just saying this, and I do think that's premature. I still, if I'm the Lakers, would have loved to have had Luka Dončić, and I'm glad he's my guy for the next dozen years. But I do wonder, Nick, if he doesn't win it this year, or let's say LeBron is still very good next year. Like if he doesn't win it before LeBron falls off or retires, it'll be interesting, like, when will he win it? And I think he's so good, I can't imagine him not winning it. But if I think the answer for Luka is just focus more on defense, at least becoming interested in defense, and just make sure you're in tip-top shape. And then I think he'll definitely
He obviously needs to be in better shape. I get that. It does feel like, man, we are really on a knife's edge in reactions to a game Friday night where Luka was not himself and they fell apart at the end, and a game Sunday that came down to the final 10 seconds. Right. And the NBA came out yesterday and was like, oh, by the way, our bad. That was a foul, and it should have been Luka going to the line to take the lead. And it's one thing when I disagree with basketball people who I always disagree with. You and I oddly see a lot of things very similarly, and I cannot fathom a world where Luka doesn't have not just multiple MVPs at the end of the day, but is a champion. And while I don't think it's likely, I could absolutely see a world where Anthony Edwards never wins a title. I think it's a tougher, I think we have seen a proof of concept of Luka Dončić with an average supporting cast going through a gauntlet of the playoffs, including Anthony Edwards' team, to make a finals. And I think that we are on a bit of a sugar high after Anthony Edwards' 43-point game, which was the first time he had scored 40 in the playoffs in his last, 15 playoff
But
games.
you don't have to score 40.
No, I know. But I think...
let's just say if it was LeBron and Anthony Edwards, switch Anthony Edwards and Luka, how good do you think the Lakers would be? Not as good?
No, I don't think as good. And I think that none of us would have... I think these last two games are warping us a bit. Going into the weekend...
Because he's taken over in the clutch.
No, right. And listen, and playoff games do matter more than regular season games. I get all of that. But we have a larger sample for Anthony and for Luka in the playoffs than just this weekend. That's all I'm...
But the feeling is that Luka, and even some of what Zach said, Luka, I hate to say declining.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.